If you go to homes and you see the dehumanizing way in which domestic workers are treated.
I was psychologically damaged. I was emotionally not balanced because I was going through hell.
The husband used to come and touch me sometimes.
So we need much more awareness about the rights of domestic workers.
So as a society, let us begin to speak out because we might be saving a life.
The important thing is that we want to ensure that domestic work is not just domestic work, but that it is decent.
Nigeria is a signatory to the International Labour Organization's Domestic Workers Convention, also known as Convention 189, but has not ratified or domesticated it. As in other parts of the world, domestic work in Nigeria falls within the informal sector that operates in the invisible space of the private household, providing personal and household care. Domestic work in Africa is performed mostly by women and children, unprotected by labor laws. The use of children, women and girls in domestic service is widespread in metropolitan areas across Africa and Nigeria in particular.
My own situation, it started when I was just very young. Then I can't take decisions myself. So I remember when I was very small, I think I was just like 6, I was very small. And I found myself in Lagos. Till today, I don't even know where.
In my case, it wasn't actually that I went there, to work. It was supposed to be a family friend that, was supposed to, give me solace, succor, so to speak. But unfortunately, the reverse was the case. When I got in there, fine, I was made to do all the the household chores, which for me was not a big deal, so to speak. Well, anything to finish my secondary education. The family they had this Christian ministry. The wife was so much involved in it. At every point in time, she would always travel, out of the state, out of the domain, and the man would be there. So whether I was being paid or not, I would say that my form of payment was the fact that I was being sent to school.
There I stayed for so long. While I was there, I have to take care of the children, do all the housework. Though I wasn't paid, she promised to send me to school. So I stayed for like 2 years without school. And while I was there, I think most of the time she saw a lot of things, mostly practically everything. So I'll be the one in charge of the provision at home, and I'll still have the one on the road to sell. So basically I work sometimes till 1 a.m. I'm still awake working. And I was not going to school until sometimes people started telling her, am I not going to school again? Am I not going to school again until and I started. But when I'm in school, most of the time I go late because I have to do a lot of work. It's in the barracks or jail cantonment. I'm the one that would clean, arrange the load, bathe the children to go to school. Me too, I was still a child, but I still have to take care of them. And I stayed there until I was able to finish primary school. I even have to repeat primary 3 twice.
The father of the house, started, touching me, as time went by, touching me, touching my bones, touching, every part of me. And as time went by, he started wanting to have carnal knowledge of me. And, he would, when the wife is not around, he would call me inside his room when every other person was asleep, to do all sorts of things. Unfortunately, as naive as I was, I couldn't even, fathom what he was doing with me, but I just knew that he was doing something that was wrong with me, and I know that I would plead with him, I would beg him that please don't do this to me, please, please, sir. And he will tell me, shut up your mouth, blah, blah. And I dare not, even tell mommy, because it would even say, that mommy will not believe you. Nobody will believe you. See, and that is the plight of a whole lot of domestic, workers.
I started developing. So sometime at night, I'm alone in the parlor. That's where I sleep. The husband used to come and touch me sometimes. He used to come and touch me. But I still thank God, because while I was there in primary school, I gave my life to Jesus. I happen to know God, and I always pray. So when I think back, I just know that it's God. God really helped me. He wasn't able to force himself, but he always tried to touch me, and whenever I wake up, he would just run away.
Unfortunately for me, I had to leave the house every morning 4:30 a.m. to go to school. And unfortunately for me, he had to walk me to the bus stop, because the path I had to go through was dark and was lonely. So mommy gave him the responsibility of walking me, to school, every day. And that was another round of tragedy, because he will walk me to school and do all sort of perpetrate all sort of acts with me. My uniform then was a white skirt and blouse, so he would, when going to school, he would raise up my blouse, and he will start fondling me and doing all sorts of things, raise up my skirt, wanting to penetrate into me. At times I come down with drops of blood and all that. And unfortunately, I get to school, I'm so tired, I'm weak, I'm drowsy, crying. And unfortunately, I couldn't even confide in the closest of all my friends that this was what I was going through, because I was a brilliant student in school, and unfortunately my grades dropped in my final year, but nobody could point their fingers on what was really happening. Everybody thought that probably it was because of the distance, but I was psychologically damaged. I was emotionally not balanced, because I was going through hell.
In the last couple of years, what we are seeing predominantly, the predominant trend of child sexual abuse. In fact, we started a shelter earlier this year, and I can tell you that majority of the cases we've had in the shelter so far have been domestic helps, especially teenage girls coming in with a lot of abuses. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, especially sexual abuse. There's a trend. There seems to be a feeling, a kind of impunity on the sides of employers, especially male employers, who feel that part of the services of domestic workers, especially young domestic workers, is maybe sex exchange. Which is really, really bad, because many of these girls come traumatized. Many of them come really damaged emotionally.
Some of the psychological challenges that they will face, as they navigate life, will be issues of isolation, depression, and anxiety. And sometimes these harsh conditions can trigger underlying mental health issues such as schizophrenic illness, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar illnesses, vulnerable to substance use disorders, and chronic stress disorder. Sleep deprivation is a mental health condition because their sleep pattern is, tempered with they are deprived. They have eating disorder, social anxieties and phobia, low self-worth, self-esteem, violation of dignity that can further worsen their condition.
We need much more awareness about the rights of domestic workers. If you go to homes and you see the dehumanizing way in which domestic workers are treated and the impunity with which they do this, you will know that people are not just aware that these people have rights, that they are just workers, people earning a living in a decent way, and that they deserve to be treated decently. It's really scandalous.
Due to the high rate of poverty, Child labor is prevalent in many parts of Africa. Children carrying out domestic work is the most common form of urban child labor. Young children are placed in homes to serve as domestic servants, while their wages may be collected by their sponsor. The International Labour Organization established the Decent Work for Domestic Workers agenda, and specifically Convention 189 and Supplementary Recommendations number 201 of 2011, which came into force in September 2013. It recognizes the social and economic value of this occupation and calls for the progressive extension of social protection to domestic workers. Given that Nigeria has not adopted Convention 189, international law, advocacy to sensitize stakeholders on the need to do so and to highlight the contribution of domestic workers to society, their rights, and gaps in the law and social protection policies is imperative.
Domestic workers are not organized in Nigeria. So in the context of workers generally, or who should be a worker, the labor law does cover them because it protects the age of entry. They are unable to tap, access their rights, the privileges, the entitlements that the labor law will, provides for them simply because they are not organized. They don't have a union. The union does not focus on them. They are scattered. They're not just organized. You don't even know where they are. You just know they are there. You cannot really identify correctly where and what they are doing, the amount of work they do. Labor law in Nigeria, for instance, talks about 8 hours work. If you go beyond 8 hours, you are entitled to extra allowance, like overtime allowance for junior workers and some other kinds of privileges. Now, this is what the labor law says. Domestic workers don't have a time limit. They work almost 24 hours round the clock. So you see, this law is there that protects work as in 8 hours per day, and also provides for even break time, provides for sick leave, provides for maternity leave, and so on and so forth. They are there, but they are not accessible by domestic workers. So I think there are two different things. There are labor laws that protect the rights of the worker. The domestic worker is a unique, or is unfortunately a group of workers that are unable. So it's not that they are not protected, but that they are unable to access the entitlement, the rights, that the labor law that offers in covering the work.
What can be done is for the government to adopt the ILO policy, ILO 189, that specifically spells out the rules and regulations, the policies, and the guiding principles about the welfare of domestic workers to ensure, to reduce violence against domestic workers, to ensure that they have access to all kinds of welfare, all kinds of rights and entitlements of other domestic workers, and to ensure in general that they are treated in a dignified way. Our government has to adopt it and implement that convention, so that we know, at least for a start, that they are serious about the welfare, the protection, the future of domestic workers in Nigeria.
And families who take these domestic workers in should imbibe, the spirit of service, that kind of thing, and they should practice, what we call in psychology unconditional positive regard, and something that some type of like unconditional love. where you value someone, whether they're working for you, whether they're part of your blood or whatever. You just value a human because they're first human.
The society at large, you see, most of the times, unfortunately, those days when we're growing up, everybody takes care of the children. Now in the society, you just look away. Let's stop looking away. Even if you cannot do something, as a person, you can talk to somebody that knows somebody that can take an action. Or you suspect something is going on in your neighbor's house, in your office or something. Try to speak to somebody, to speak to somebody. You could just be saving a life, because these are situations that makes most of the time some people become suicidal. I was discussing, at a forum some time ago, and I was talking about my experiences, in some of the experiences I had as a teenager, struggling teenager. I said to her, I thank God that it's not in this age and time that everybody is taking sniper to kill themselves. You can get sniper everywhere. Because at one point I became suicidal. All I wanted to do was, instead of this shame, let me just end it all. But then you wouldn't find things, like that will just, take up your life like you have now. So these are things that makes people, get suicidal at times, and they won't talk. Like in my case, I just kept mute, because when people look at you, they expect so much from you, and you now look at, yourself as people that put you on this high pedestal, well-behaved girl, the decent, the good girl, and all that, and you just fall down from that pedestal that they have put you. You're like, no. Instead of falling, let me just end it up. So as a society, let us begin to speak out, because we might be saving a life.
Civil society organizations can sensitize to raise awareness on these issues. They should promote human rights and dignity of domestic workers, raise campaigns for mandatory rest day, especially in situation where, even if it's in situation where the domestic worker is living with the people that they are providing service for. They should have a day of rest, or hours where they rest and they have a life. So we can raise campaigns for mandatory rest day, offer insight into what the life of a domestic worker is and the possible mental health implication if something is not done to avert, exposure to this risk.
The important thing is that we must ensure that domestic work is not just domestic work, but that it is decent, and then all the factors that make for decent work is also enshrined, or at least is also seen to be practiced in the domestic work sector.